To fill the void of leaving Kalamazoo and missing the biggest athletic event in Western Michigan University history, Graham Couch requested to be on our show, presumably because he agrees with and cosigns on every word we said last week. You're listening to Can't Read, Can't Write. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Can't Read, Can't Write, the podcast that proves Spartans can talk. I'm Mike Jones, joined as always by the guy who knows sports, Kevin Greck, the guy who knows shit, Alex Plum, and the guy who believes podcast appearances are endorsements, Lansing State Journal columnist Graham Couch. Graham, thanks for joining us.
I do fully endorse this podcast. I enjoy it every week.
That's great.
I enjoy it even the weeks where I listen to it after the games have happened that you're previewing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's just because Kevin's previews are so absolutely essential.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That is, Graham, if ever there was a cry for help, my word, please, sir. We need to find something else better for you to do with your time than listen to our previews after the fact. Jesus. Guys, how about Western? The state has another national championship winning hockey team. Isn't that like unbelievable? Great for them. I'm not even a little bit envious. I'm doing really good over here. I'm just so happy for them, you guys.
It's kind of cool. Like I covered when I was covering them years and years ago, forever, they were horrible.
Yeah.
I was covering Western Michigan sports, and I was not covering Western Michigan hockey. That's how bad they were. And then at the very end, when I was there, they had Jeff Blashill come in, and that just changed everything. It was, and they figured out that was the sport they ought to invest in, and they did.
Well,
and this is what happened 2 years later.
Listening to your podcast, it sounds like when you left, they stopped covering. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I was not thrilled. I mean, that's part of me. Still comes out a little bit, my frustration with the Kalamazoo Gazette / M Live, the former Booth newspaper chain or whatever. Just the idea that they weren't in St. Louis, and if you can't cover your community, like what's the point of existing? Like that's sort of my issue. That should be like the baseline, right? And so that bothers me still. And even if you're not going to cover something well or regularly, there are moments where you've got to meet the moment. And
right.
And if you don't, then what are we doing here?
Right. Well, before we dig into some more, we, of course, want to thank everyone for listening. And if we could ask, please share the pod with Spartans in your life. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_pod, Blue Sky at SpartanPod. And then, of course, follow Graham Couch at the Lansing State Journal on his podcast, Couch in the Rube. And it's at Graham_Couch, right? Yeah?
Yep.
On Twitter? Okay. Nailed it. All right. Greg, what are we doing this week?
Well, we're in off-topic season, so we could just freewheel it, decide to talk about whatever we want. There have been some things that are happening with the basketball team. There's a new addition, one Caleb Glenn. Maybe we cover that. There's some other activity happening in ice hockey, a little closer to Munn Ice Arena. And we should probably talk about football, maybe a little gymnastics as well. Then, as always, we'll take those social media questions.
All right. Well, Graham, you were dying to chat with us after we came hard on you last week. But before we do that, I believe Plum wants to bring up that you should have just mentioned him explicitly in your column. Plum, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, your column a couple weeks ago, Graham, I'm going to search for the language. Do you guys remember the exact verbiage that was used? Something like,
if you're Alex Plum, you need to get a life, I believe is exactly
it was more or
what
less like fully adjusted adults who care this much need to fully invest more in their therapy practices. And so that was well taken. I think
I used the word fandom is mental illness. I don't know.
That was it. It was the mental illness.
It was
the mental illness. Which, I think is true. But, if there's any retort, it's this. There are, with what's happening in the world right now, particularly, if there are things that can still help us to feel real feelings, even if those feelings are alarming and unhinged, good. We're entitled to them. And if Michigan State sports is what's going to get me to absolutely make an utter ass of myself week after week, then goddamn it, go green.
This is like
This is your version of touching grass.
Situation.
So I'm listening last week, and I actually found it really interesting because one of the thing that caught my attention most was the conversation, and I had a bit in the column about Tre Holloman leaving on the idea that, that we would not expect this of ourselves or friends or anybody else in the employment world. We've all had jobs we've loved that were hard to leave, and sometimes it was just time or a better opportunity or whatever. And you guys did not relate to that at all, and relative to the way I did. And so, but I started thinking about that because that is interesting. Number one, it means Michigan State is not preparing people for careers they enjoy. That's issue number one. But small issue. But for me, like, my experience professionally is completely different than yours. So, like, I went to Columbia College, Chicago, and I have strong feelings about that place. I enjoyed my time there. I have great friends from it. Had a good college experience. But it isn't the Big Ten campus experience. So I recognize that. But 3 of the 4 jobs I've had since then, I don't want to say I've struggled to leave, but I've been emotionally attached to. In Freeport, Illinois, and Kalamazoo, and now in Lansing, where my identity is tied up in it. A lot of my friends, 2 of the guys were my wedding. I met in Freeport, lifelong friends in Kalamazoo, would have stayed forever had circumstances not changed. In Lansing, I've chosen to stay when I have had other chances. And so I was writing sort of from the way I think, but it also made me think that maybe a lot of people don't have those shared experiences. Right. And so, but for me, I mean, I remember when I just knew I had to leave Freeport, Illinois, because I was making $28,000 a year, and you can't live that way forever. But
not even in Freeport, Illinois.
It's one of the few places you can almost do it. But and the job offer was too good in Kalamazoo. But I left some friends that it was hard to do. And I remember in Kalamazoo feeling like that this is the place I just want to be. I love it at its peak when it was great, and the people that were there, and different times people left, and I've had that feeling in Lance. So I guess that's where, when I'm writing from that, I'm writing from my own experiences, and I probably should be aware that I don't share the same college experience. Now that not every MSU fan shares your experience either, and is connected as you.
Yes,
but you can only share the experience you come from, and so that's something that I have to be aware of. But I right away when that happened, I just started thinking about that situation because I felt so differently. And that made me sort of think of the Tre Holloman situation and how you could be still loyal to a place and have feelings for a place and feel connected to it and still feel like now is a time I need to do something else.
I think something that's interesting about your career, maybe in contrast, is partly that yours is a community-based career, right? That you're telling stories of a place in the same way you're telling the stories of things that we lived in these places, right? So if you'd been here when we were in college, you would have been writing the articles that would have been chronicling, right, our lived experience in college. And so obviously I don't do what you do, but I can imagine that in some ways that building your sources, getting to know a place, that you're leaving a place more than you're leaving a job, right? And so that may be part of the challenge. I also, one of the things that I would just say, I remember, she's going to hate that I bring this up, but my sister was debating where to go to school. And she ended up going at first to a really small college in Ohio because she was going to play softball. And a friend made the point that there's never a time in your life where you'll be surrounded by so many peers as when you go to college, right? And so we have a real Lord of the Flies situation going on in East Lansing, right? The manager at Rick's is 22, right? And so I think there's something to maybe that and I bring that up only because like I went to law school in Philly, right? And so that's the experience of going to school in a bigger city is wildly different than being implanted into this formerly farmland that now it's just inhabited by 18 to 24-year-olds for the most part. And so I think I don't know that might be part of the reason that we come at it from that angle. But compounding it is that Tre Holloman seemed
Yeah.
to be that,
That's
right? That everything that all the stories told about him, this guy who started then came to come off the bench because it was for the good of the team, played 2 guard spots for the good of the team. After every game is posting on Instagram, meet me at the field house, right? Like and then not to mention the iconic photo moments of chest to Edie, the pushing the Wolverines off. And I think for me, it's those two things that for Trey, it felt like it wasn't a job. And now that he's with Will Wade of all people.
Yeah. Is there any more like this is like telegraphing all I care about is NIL and it is a job that like then going to NC State and Will Wade?
And he's got to compete for a job there. I think for him, as much as the money, and he was not relative to the other guys paid on the team. He wasn't like an upper paid guy, right? So, and he's got 1 year left. He probably recognizes at this point the NBA is likely not in his future.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got 1 year left to sort of maximize your worth and set yourself up with a nice nest egg. But I think more than that, I think he's a guy who wants to run a team, wants to be the point guard, and that was not going to happen at Michigan State with Jeremy Fears Jr. there. So I think those two things. But what would have helped Trey in this situation, because people would still want to love Trey, is if he would come out and talk about it, and because he could salvage this even today. If he did an interview where he was just talking about how hard this was for him and why he's leaving, and and sort of met you where you guys are and where a lot of fans are, in that sense of because, for example, if Tre Holloman was like, nobody's saying this about Jace Richardson, and he's going to the NBA, which is a clear, obvious opportunity, right? Yep. After a year, if Tre Holloman was leaving for the NBA, nobody would think anything else or anything of it, and he's going to, NC State seems weird, and I feel that way to some degree too, because he did throw away an opportunity to be just this all-time beloved guy, and truly, because of the things he'd done beyond who he was as a player, and that's lost to some degree now. I don't know how it'll age over time, and again, if he came out and just talked about the decision and why he did it and the things that were hard about it and whatever, maybe he could salvage some of it, but that. I think part of what I was trying to get at was the idea that we are going to have to look at what loyalty is and length of time differently. And what, he was a guy who after his freshman year, I thought would transfer because they were bringing in Jeremy Fears and they were bringing in these big recruits and they seemed to be recruiting over him, and he wanted to stay and fight it out. But ultimately, when it came time to choose one guy to come off the bench last year, it was him. And when it comes to who is going to start at point guard next year, even if he's as efficient as Jeremy Fears, this was going to be Jeremy Fears' show starting the games. And so I think he knows that, and I think for him, he wanted to go somewhere and have a chance to compete, to start and finish his career differently. But I still think he feels strongly about MSU. And in hindsight, all the interviews I had with him late in the season. It was really weird now that I think of him, because he was very reflective in all of them, and talked about our conversations and how much he enjoyed certain things. And looking at it now, he was clearly like saying goodbye, so to speak. But I didn't recognize it in the moment. But it was clear that I think part of the reason he was so emotional at the very end was that he knew what nobody else did at that moment. Yeah.
Well, I think that perspective would have been appreciated by either of my more mature co-hosts. Either of you should have reflected on this last week. How dare both of you? It's not my job. But I think that was very humanizing and ably stated. And I appreciate, Michael, ultimately what you said, which I think is they're humans and they're going to make their decisions. And the challenge for me and my emotional unwellness is that it reminds me that the what I have recast in my historical memory as, the glory days of alma mater, that they're not real anymore. The world has changed. We've grown up, and to say goodbye to Trey in this kind of way is to recognize and deal with the death of college memories. And I think that's where the power of the emotion comes from. That's where the joy is. So, but I thank you that you've humanized him well in a way that he deserves. And I think that's, for someone who was such a good Spartan for so long, he deserves that.
The danger, though, just real quickly, what players have to understand is exactly what you said there, Plum, though, is the idea that like your connection and how emotionally invested, this is what makes the whole thing tick.
Yeah.
If you ever lose this, it doesn't work, right? That's why I have a job. It's why the places are packed. It's why, they have to, at some level, the athletes have to understand that their worth is tied to your connection to the school.
Yeah.
And so they have to respect that.
So,
sorry about that.
So two things on that. One, to the audience, we should appreciate Plum's growth moment that he just had, because
it was performative.
One of the reasons why you won't see last week's episode on YouTube is that he was truly and literally brandishing a screwdriver at Graham.
It's up now.
It's up. You can watch it now that he's had his personal growth moment. You can go back and watch this today. He had a weapon. He was pointing a weapon at. And two, related to the athletes and those around them understanding that we have that connection to the university, and that's what drives NIL. I think, Graham, there's something that you're dancing around, and it's probably because you've got egg on your face that you were scooped by Spartan Illustrated when Crystal Flint went ahead and wrote herself an op-ed to us, to the audience.
To the audience. So
and I understand that that's probably very sensitive for you because, they got you on that one. But is there, that whole, we talk about the groups around these student athletes, right? Like, they're also being pushed in different directions, and those people don't fully understand this connection. Like that, she kept talking about being a fan of her son, and it's like, yeah, I'm a fan of her son as insofar as he's wearing a green and white
jersey,
jersey.
Yeah, that's
it. So I guess, where do we land on all of this? Because those things can't continue to go off in that direction and then have the fan base continue to support the student athletes the way that they do. It seems like we're diverging, and I'm wondering what ends up happening in the long run with college sports.
I'm worried about it because, like, I remember being at Illinois this year when that game went so badly for them, and that it felt like that fan base was in on that team as long as that season was going all right. But the second it wasn't, all right, I don't really have any room for this team because these guys aren't going to be here anyway. They're not that connected. I do wonder if, I'm very curious to see the first time that Michigan State loses, 5, 6, 7 guys in the portal. And it feels like most of the team is changing over. And then what that does the next year. And you'll see it in places like the secondary ticket market, right? How easy is it to get a seat in Breslin? And that'll be the first sign that things are changing, because it'll still look full for a while. It's going to take a while, because ultimately it's going to, think about how far it would take for you to not feel at all connected or not at all interested. Now, at some point that could happen. I think the bigger danger is that the next generation of you never happens.
Right.
So the experiences that you guys had in college together that you're talking about, 15 years later, are not what the next group does. The people are 16 years old now, get to college, never feel as connected to the athletes or to the college sports experience, and then don't carry it on with them beyond. And that's where the sport winds up in trouble. So, you get people all the time, so, ratings are better than ever, this better than ever. It's not like it's going to die overnight. It's going to be something that it gets chipped away at, and all of a sudden you realize there's just not as much interest. College basketball is a much bigger problem than college football, because football is still just owns this country. and the 12-team playoff has helped, and you have fewer schools that are getting cast aside because you have fewer schools that play major college football. But in basketball, you already have the problem where you have 300 schools who no longer feel like they can actually build anything that leads to a dream because you've killed that level of mid-major, low-major hoops, and those kids just transfer out if they're any good. And then, I think even at the Michigan States of the world, it's just the whole thing is in pro sports we root for laundry, right? We root in college sports we root for a school, and that connection is just so much stronger than you really see in any pro sport to me in this. Now you may have people who are lifelong Lions fans or whatever, but it's the closest thing is like, would be like soccer over in Europe where you have towns where this is the club they all come up with and they hate the town next to them. And then that creates the rivalry. Like there's stuff that's like deeply rooted. You don't get that with, you can love the Tigers, but it's a different feel. I do wonder though, like with professional sports, we all understand the terms and we make a decision. Right now, part of the problem in college sports is we don't know where it's going. We don't understand the terms. We don't like the way the sport is operating. And if they can get to a point, even if it's not the same as it was, where we at least understand the terms, this guy's on a 2-year contract. After that, there is no transfer portal. He's a free agent. Of course, you either re-sign him or you go somewhere else. The transfer portal can go away once you have contracts. Contracts up, you're either going to re-sign them or not. And they could sign a 4-year deal. They could sign a 1-year, whatever it is. But you understand the terms. And once we get to a point that's just that at least is there. So you don't have what's happening in Tennessee right now. You don't have what's happening. There's just a lot of – I think that's part of it. We don't like where this is going, but we don't know where it's going. And but, yeah, I'm worried about it for sure.
Well, so related to that, you brought up the idea of Michigan State losing 5, 6, 7 guys, right? And knock on wood, that's probably hopefully not something that we're going to experience so long as Izzo's here, because I'm pretty sure Izzo won't be here if that happens. But bringing it slightly back to Trey, because you mentioned that he might have been on the lower end of compensated for the team. It would be undeniable to say that Trey didn't win us a number of games this year. He was a very valuable member of this team. And what the sort of the sentiment is that Izzo's trying to do this as a look. I'm gonna pay you to stay, right? The Jackson Kohler, Cohen Carr, Jeremy Fears. I think you made the point that if these were transfers we had landed, everyone would be celebrating right now. But instead, we're just quietly assuming they're going to stick around, which means they're hopefully being compensated. It's disappointing, I guess, to hear that Trey might not have been compensated well enough or wasn't capable of being compensated well enough for him to not look. I'm curious about the motivation of running a team. He was a co-captain. He played just as many minutes as Jeremy Fears did. And I don't get the sense that being the point guard is going to change his European prospects. Right.
So, yeah, it's a couple things on that.
So is it just not about the team then? Like, I guess part of this is a dig on Trey. Sorry, is that like that feels like it's all ego then? That it's I want this show to be about me, and what I thought about Trey. I said last week I fell in love with a stripper. I thought he was about the team. So I thought he was compensated. I thought we would take care of him. I thought he played enough. He was in it winning time. Like, what's the deal here?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I do think, and again, I don't know exactly what he was making last year, and I don't know what he would have been able to get next year. They may have been able to take care of him. This happened quickly afterwards. They had not, from my understanding, they had not met with guys about like NIL packages for next year or anything at the time Tre Holloman got into the transfer portal. This was something he was prepared to do either way. One of the challenges you have in the sport, one of the things they're going to have to get away from, and one of the reasons that there was just very little chance Xavier Booker was going to come back, is they're still at a point now where they're paying for potential. They're paying
Mhm.
big time recruits more than they are production, and that's across the board often. And so you can't keep paying Booker what he's making. So if Booker were to stay, he was going to have to take probably a big pay cut, right? That's just and somebody out there is going to give him a decent amount of money because he's 6'11". You know, he can leave and shoot. Like, you just watch him in a skills competition, you go, yeah, I'd like that on my team. And with Tre Holloman has less of that, right? He was a low 4-star, low mid 4-star guy, a team guy, and a role player, even at his best, even when it was a big role. And so that's something they're gonna have to start figuring out. Like, Tyson Walker at the end was doing pretty well the last couple of years because they recognized what they needed to do there and how important he was to the team, but he wasn't making what Xavier Booker was making.
Yeah.
So this is, you go back to MSU football, Blackstock, the JUCO offensive, like, that guy was making as much, if not more, than anybody when that, and so
great.
There was a lot of frustration with that. But how do you get a 5-star offensive tackle to come to your school when everybody's making an offer? That's the challenge right now. That's the problem in the sport too, is it's become a situation where, one of the great things that's happened in a lot of pro sports is these rookie salary scales. You're not trying to pay Glenn Robinson $100 million anymore as a rookie, because you get drafted here, you make this, and then you're trying to get to a second contract. College sports almost needs that. They need something where you really can't get paid until you're on campus and you've done something. But that, again, would have to be collectively bargained, and we're just not there yet.
Isn't that the basis of the one and done rule? Is precisely that? Is that the owners didn't want to race to the bottom or top, depending, of
they wanted a
high
year
schoolers.
They wanted a year
like,
of college to vet these guys, basically.
We all agree we're not going to do this anymore, right? Like,
they wanted to protect themselves from themselves.
Yeah.
And
right.
So that's what they.
College needs a version of that.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, and again, it's going to have to come through something that's in the legislative or in the courts, or better off, collectively bargained, and you get there where right now you just have too many points in a season too where the portal is open. Football is especially bad. Like, and there needs to be a real understanding of, okay, this is the period of time when free agency hits, right? This is the time where you can, and it can't be twice a year. It can't be here, and here. And, I don't know, all that stuff. And I think we can live with it once we get there. You want to be able to respect and understand the sport. And right now, that's the other problem. There's just not enough transparency in who has how much money and what it's going to cost. And so there's just a lot of frustration too. It's, why doesn't Izzo just throw a bag at all these guys, and how much, I don't even sometimes I get a growing understanding each year of what they have and how much, but like, I don't have a great understanding right now of what they have next year, especially with the prospect of revenue sharing, which hasn't technically passed yet with the House case. So like, all that stuff is it's just a weird time, because I don't, even if that passes, NIL's not going away entirely unless there's some sort of agreement that's going to be really, people are going to, I have a real hard time believing that NIL is not still going to be used in some of the ways it is now. The only thing I will say is Michigan State is not the only school where donors have been waiting to get to revenue sharing, have been told by their schools, get us there, spending this money that you get zero return on, and then it gets better, right? It doesn't. So I don't know that every place is going to spend the way they are right now into perpetuity, that every place has the donors to do that.
Well, at MSU in particular, it's get us to revenue share and then change your money over to the football stadium, please. Yeah, just rewrite that check to us, back to us this time. Thank you. We want to build that thing. Appreciate you. Or the new stadium district, whatever that is, that's happening off of True.
Is that going to be a social district? Because I'm there if it's a social district.
I think it's right now. It seems like it's whatever you want it to be. It's just it seems like there's a stadium, and then there's retail, there's hotel, there's maybe the new Kellogg Center, there's ambulatory something. Because
is there also like housing, just like core housing, apartment housing? Sure.
Who knows?
Need more housing.
Is moving there.
But we're going off topic. I guess one question for you, Graham. Any understanding why the universities, because the NCAA just does what the presidents want, essentially. Any reason why they're not running towards a collective bargaining agreement at this point? Like, how does the current system benefit the universities?
I think they're always slow on this stuff. They don't want student athletes to be employees, and largely the athletes tell you they don't want to be employees. So you have to this point, you've had two people sort of agree on that part of things, even though they're
that one thing.
Yeah, one thing. But I mean, I remember even, with Luana K. Simon talking to her, this is, 2014, somewhere around there, about, the college football playoff expansion and why it couldn't expand. And it seemed to me at that point that the presidents would never agree to that. And she was really firm on it. And the idea that it was just too much to go into another semester and all this sort of stuff that was bad. They're just slow on everything. Everything. I mean, even people are smart in lots of other areas of their lives, and seem to be very slow on this stuff. And I don't understand that entirely. And I understand you're also trying to protect something that's important to universities, important to communities. That's been around a long time. You don't want to move too quickly to something you don't need to.
Yeah.
But you look around what's happening. I don't see how you don't get there, but I don't know what that looks like either. I mean, unlike a professional sports union or anything the athletes are only there for a few years. Like it's going to be a weak union for them. And I don't know. It's a hard thing to figure out. If I had the answers, I would write about it with more clarity. Instead, I just write a lot of crap.
I love that neither the presidents nor the athletes, and the athletes shouldn't want it because they're having their cake and eating it too, fully right now. Graham, let's look forward and talk. First, Michigan State acquired Caleb Glenn from FAU, 6'7" transfer, started as Louisville as I believe a top 50 recruit before transferring to FAU. Interesting get. I think just some quick stats for listeners who may not know. Shot a little over 40% last year from behind the arc, averaging just above 3 attempts per game, over 60% from 2, 69% at the rim. Not a Cohen Carr, but is a dunker. And then I'm stealing I got this from Sheehan, so shout out where it's due. But 80th percentile on catch and shoot effective field goal percentage and 93rd percentile off the dribble in effective field goal percentage. This feels like a Nate Oates wet dream, first of all. And then second, come on, he shoots at the rim and he shoots threes. That's all he shoots.
Well, there's one more element to this. Plum, have you looked at his free throw percentage?
Don't look.
Don't look. You're
gonna learn it. You're gonna learn his free throw percentage, bud.
You know how I said he shot 60% from twos? Give or take the same.
No, not good.
It's unusual to be that good of a 3-point shooter and that bad at free throws. But anyway, Graham, this was an interesting pickup. It would not have been. I get that it's a Fiddler backfill, but if you were listing out things that I thought the team needed, this guy feels a little bit in the mold of what Cohen Carr is, or we hope he might be. And I guess I'm curious. Like, there's still not a lot of ball handling on this team. Obviously, there's acquisitions to come, but have you anything you can share about how Izzo's thinking about roster construction? Particularly lessons learned from this season, where I think we all agree the team was good, but maybe overperformed expectations. And if you're going to chase another natty, like a 6'7" dude who can shoot a 3 feels like a good start.
Yeah, I think this is a Frankie Fiddler replacement in some ways. They're different players, but what I mean is that you lose a big wing like that and who's got experience, and they thought Fiddler was going to be a better shooter this year than he wound up being from outside. And so you get that in Glenn. I think also they went pretty hard after this guy right away. They had the connection a little bit through Jeremy Fears, And I think they also realized in the tournament, it wasn't just the Auburn game where, you just need more length and size and guys who can do that. You need more guys who give you versatility at the 4. You saw the trouble they had in earlier NCAA tournament games where when you have to go small, you need guys who are versatile and strong enough to deal with it. I think they just want versatility and length on that perimeter. He's a guy who has potentially 2 years left. You never know because obviously he's transferred twice and this is year 3. But they like that about him. They like that he's a guy, I think, who it grew a lot from year 1 to year 2. So that maybe he hasn't reached his ceiling yet. And the fact that he's shot 41% from 3 was a big deal. He's a good bucket getter. I don't think at least from what I've seen so far, I don't think he can be your leading scorer in a season. And I don't think that's why they're bringing him in. He's not a great facilitator. Like I don't see him. He's not somebody when he puts his head down to go to the rim is finding the next guy very often from what I've seen. But I mean, he's an experienced physical athlete who can shoot the 3, who can defend multiple positions. And, it gives you depth and options there and all sorts of lineup flexibility. So I think it was a good get. Yeah, it doesn't solve a thing at the guard position where your biggest need still exists. But if you're going to win, if they're going to get back to where they were and they're going to try to take another step, you've got to have guys like that too. It can't just be filling every need.
Well, this isn't an indication anyway that there's any sort of philosophical change about, or maybe not philosophical change, but I guess maybe how Izzo's thinking about how to construct his roster, because he needs to get at least 2 more guys, maybe 3, right?
I would say minimum
3 would put him at 12.
3 would put him at 12. Yeah, I think they'll get at least 2, and it depends who that is and what they look like. The problem at guard is, other than Jeremy Fears, they don't have anybody right now who can run the point. I mean, 0. And so even if you were to find somebody like a Tyson Walker type, right, who is a primary off-ball scorer and can run the point, you still have 0 depth if there's an injury, if there's foul trouble. I mean, to me, it's just not enough. So they've got to find somebody who's able to play point guard to some degree. The problem is you have a guy who's still a redshirt sophomore in Fears who's going to eat up a lot of those minutes. Fears is, for all that he is for Michigan State, and I think can be for them, when you're trying to recruit and build a roster, he is also a little bit, it blocks you a little bit. And so I'll be interested to see who they get in that role. And, but yeah, they got to get a primary scorer at the guard position. They got to get a shooter and a primary scorer. That's where their emphasis needs to be. Everywhere else, you can live with. You could say you could upgrade at the 5. You can always say that, right? I mean, that's pretty expensive to do these days, and it can be hard to find those guys. And some of them wind up like, the kid at Indiana who is a mess, right? And you got to be careful on what who that is. But you could do that, but you have to get guards. Like, to me, that's where the emphasis has to be right now. And you have to get a guard who's better than Tre Holloman too, because Tre Holloman is ideal for what they need in a lot of ways right now, or would have been ideal in terms of a guy who can play both guard positions, a backup. He would have been ideal in the same role he was in this year. And that's not what he wanted ultimately. And that's why he left. But they need somebody who's going to start too. And they need somebody better than Tre Holloman to be in that role.
I would suggest looking, we were absolutely right about this last summer, and I'm going to call it again. Look for a Tommy Schuster archetype for your backup point guard. Someone way low, old dude, last year, give him a, high D1 basketball offer, bring him in, like 7 minutes a game, something like that. Just fill that role. And I'm talking about for Izzo's usual spot that he doesn't fill. So Izzo loves to leave an open seat on the bench. Just fill it with small point guard from a small school.
A Foster lawyer.
Fifth year guy. Something
I would
like
do one
that.
of 2 things. I would either go do that, which I totally agree with. I think you can find somebody who wants to be part of Michigan State. For them, this would be the dream, to be part of a program like that. They've done it at a lower level or whatever it might be. Or you go get, a freshman, and you find somebody who hasn't been signed who's good or whatever, or who's available. and somebody you can grow into the role because, Fears will be a redshirt sophomore. Who knows how long he'll play at Michigan State? Who knows if he'll be in the portal ever? But you might be able to get a kid who's young enough, who's a developmental prospect, and sell them on that dream too. And the idea that eventually they could grow into being that person. That would be one of those two ways. I think that's your best chance to do it. It's either that or combo guards who can see, the minutes both ways, the Holloman types.
Yeah. Who can fill that role when necessary. Anything else on basketball before we move on to little football, maybe a little gymnastique? Graham, I know you've got a new piece out on that team. Might be worth a plug.
Yeah. Graham, let's do gymnastics. They're in championship season. We should talk gymnastics next.
We should absolutely talk about it.
They're a cool story. You just think about what 10 years ago, I guess it hasn't been that long yet, but when people thought about MSU gymnastics 8 years ago, what people thought about, and
what was that?
I try not to mention that guy's name as much as possible because I think it also cheapens what's been accomplished a little bit.
Yes,
not let them get away from it. But it's remarkable not only that they have become the program they have, they've done it without the new facility yet. I mean, if you go up to the third floor at Jenison where they practice, and you think this is what they built it, is their home
with.
And then the fact they've done it with a lot of the coaches that were around back then, and they've done it, is pretty remarkable. Now they got lucky a little bit early on with some kids who were sort of either connected to the area or whose parents went to Michigan State, and you need those breaks, right, when you're trying to build it. But the kids they're getting now, and even some who are like juniors in the program, were just huge recruits. The success is fed on itself, and like anything, the story I wrote that was in today's LSJ is about you have this rise, and we've seen the rise in other sports and what it looks like, and it usually is. And then they could not get past the final level for a little bit, and and gymnastics is one of those sports where it can be a point here, a point there. It can be who you're up against. You have to be in the top couple in a regional, and they finally did it. And it's I think something that they're. It would be very interesting to see how they perform at the national championships this week, because I think the pressure is off them. And if you look at their scores, they do have the talent to be up there in the top four on Saturday if they perform like they did in the Big Ten championships and then the regional.
It's also a sport where you're up against the inertia of building the team and also against the officials, who very much look at. Yeah. This podcast, there's a requirement that you have to talk about officiating for every single sport as you're going along. So made sure to check the box on that. Speaking though of championship,
if I was part of this podcast regularly, I would want a soccer officiating segment, like best stories of soccer officiating every week. That's there's a soccer.
You got something?
Story.
People are asking for it.
Yeah.
Talk about your recent trip to Soccer Zone. Share, please.
Have we done the one where you get bonked in the head yet? Have we talked about that and shared that video yet?
I don't. You have it, I think.
We
right?
The video exists.
It does exist.
I've watched it on loop. Sometimes I find myself just watching it
somewhere.
When did you hit days?
It was a MLS feeder program called MLS Next or something, and they played in Northville at like the complex that's out there. And this had to have been the last youth game that I did for US Soccer. It had to. I don't think I did another one afterwards. And kid cut right, and I was like, oh no, I know he's gonna try to just big fucking launch in, right into the penalty area. And I was too far, and I turned as fast as I could and just started running and thought, God help me if I can get the fuck out of his way. And he drilled me right in the back of the head. And I blacked out. I'm just fucking collapsed down. Now the force of landing woke me up, but I was oh no. And then of course the first emotion that I had was the embarrassment of oh God, because no referee wants to get hit with a ball. That's already a joke, but to fucking black out is a whole nother thing.
You finished the game?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. And the trainer came out and like I kind of was like woozy for a second, and then I got up and I was like, well, I think we had 15 minutes left. I mean, it was not like a long amount of time. So I did the assist referees came over and were like, you okay? And I'm like, I think so. I mean, I don't know I'm not going to I can go to the side and just sit there and do nothing. And maybe I could have done that, but there's no other physical, you're just running around. So I felt like maybe this was the sort of run it off. Probably not good advice. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but at any rate, it was fine. And apart from what you see today, is maybe this is a function of some sort of cognitive deterioration brought on by that event.
Tremendous.
Well, we plugged it in. Graham, we have to talk a little spring football. I know it's your favorite topic in the entire world.
Who's it start?
Two questions.
Sorry.
Only two. Truly, if there's literally anything you've heard, seen, whatever, just what should anyone give a shit about at this point in time? Because because Jonathan Smith, I think maybe to his credit, has tried to take all of the hype out of the program. So, like, if anyone was going to be excited, why would they care?
Yeah, I think the lack of hype is probably good, right? That you don't. I think what you don't want in these situations is people overselling themselves when nobody's going to believe them. And I think there's a sense of, and the more experienced players in the program who've I've been around some media availabilities, the Darius Snows of the world, and as they talk about, there is a confidence that they'll be better. I like I do when you listen to guys talk, like, I don't think they know how good they'll be, and I think you can know in a spring really, but I think there's a sense that they understand, the guys who've been around the sport understand what levels are, in college, and they understand that they'll be more competitive than they were a year ago. And the new quarterbacks coach is somebody who impressed me in sort of his no nonsense approach with Aiden Childs. They got a new secondary coach who I think they've made, I don't know, at least front facing good hires there in terms of how they communicate what they're trying to do. And obviously we only see so much. So there's been nothing that's been like discouraging where it felt like this was a spring that was just sort of a death march or anything like that. But it's also just a spring that's mostly behind closed doors with a few interviews and that. But I think the staff has a better understanding of the roster and what it's going to take. I think there's some eye-opening things for them last year, even in the Big Ten and other things. And I think a number of the players do too. And I think they're, you have some guy like, you have what you have in Nick Marsh, right? That's something that we knew he was a freshman last year, but you got a true guy there. And I think they've brought in a couple of receivers who should be intriguing. So I think they'll be okay at the playmaker positions. And, a lot of it will be, can they protect Childs? And does he grow into making smart decisions? And those two things, I think, go hand in hand, too. And I'm beyond trusting the offensive line in Michigan State football until I see it. I just, you can point to me why it's going to be better. But the last decade has just been one year after another of not being very good for the most part. And they've, I do think they've got a decent coach there now, but they've had some other I don't think that's always been the issue. I think it's a hard position to build and build correctly and have sustained success with. And maybe this is the year. But until that really happens, until you're able to win more often up front, I don't really know how you sell optimism other than I think they'll be better than they were last year, which, given how they lost to Rutgers on the final game of the season, like you would hope that better than last year was, in year two.
Two comments. One, yeah, it was great. I feel thrilled, invigorated.
It was so good. I decided not to bring up recruiting losses because we didn't need anything more dour than that.
But there's no recruiting loss. The kid you talk about, the offensive tackle goes to Notre Dame.
Yeah,
it was signing days in December. You don't want to be the first guy he commits to.
It's just getting started. We just know who we're bidding against now.
Yeah, I can't even believe they put a post up committed. He didn't commit. Like, nobody's committed. I mean, like, I wouldn't. Yeah,
pledge.
I get
Pledge.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes,
that's the part where I've completely checked out.
The seeing the quarterbacks coach repeat the refrain, though, I just will say about the work-life balance under Jonathan Smith makes me sad inside because the excellence I demand of my football coach is different than the excellence I demand of myself.
Are you watching Comparoni's YouTube videos again?
Yeah. Because
I talked to Comp. By the way, I talked to Comp after I'm getting annoyed at where he's putting the camera in these interviews. And I talked to Harms.
Your desire to gatekeep, I can't.
This is beautiful.
The next
This
step.
is beautiful.
So the worst one, this is the day after Jonathan Smith spoke last time. And Jonathan Smith gets up there, and it looks like it's going to be this really casual, informative conversation. And it starts in that tone, and then instantly Comp throws up a camera and like 2 feet from Jonathan Smith's face. It's just right in there.
Just like right here.
The whole mood changed. The tone, he was still good and then fine, but it just, the conversation changed. It got a little more formal. And I think it changed the conversation we were about to have to some degree. And I talked to him about that. I was like, you have, if this is going to be your thing, you have to invest in the equipment where it's not an iPhone, where you're back there with a Zoom and you got a mic. Like you can't throw it, I told this to Harns too, like you can't, that otherwise what the eventual recourse, the only thing I'll do is I'll get all the other writers together and we'll all do it. And if we all throw our cameras up there like this, then they'll have to come up with a policy that stops everyone because we can't do that. You can't have 7 people within 2 feet with their cameras. Anyway, that ticked me off. But Comp agreed. He's like, yeah, Comp's a level-headed guy. So, that's got to. It's my biggest pet peeve because it just, especially with athletes, it just changes conversations when they get a camera right in their face. Even if you get to watch it.
No, the camera should be in the back. I will co-sign on that it should not be occupying the real estate. But, at the same time, you also lament all camera people, right? Like, so...
cameraman? Yeah.
So if it's Fred Human with a camera crew, right, like, you're also equally peeved.
It's just a space issue sometimes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It should really just be you. I think we all agree. It should really just be Graham and a pencil and paper, and that's it.
Newsy style.
Newsy style.
Can you shed any light on what's going on with the NCAA accusations? And if the answer is no big deal. But like,
yeah, I mean, I want to be careful because I don't have a great sense of it. My sense that I feel comfortable saying is I do feel like it's not. My understanding of what it likely is that it's not the biggest deal in the world. It really isn't. And if I had a different sense of it, I would be chasing it differently. And now these are hard stories to chase. NCAA, I'm not well sourced in the NCAA, and you get, people around the program, are real skittish about this stuff. They don't want to. But my understanding of what it likely is, based on just a couple of conversations I've had, is that it's not. This isn't rampant cheating or anything that was. But yeah, I want to be a little careful because I don't have it really well sourced right now. But
it helps. Not something. It helps that there's nothing that you can do anymore. Like North Carolina proved that you can do whatever you want academically. Other institutions
Will Wade
have proven what you can do. Yeah,
yes.
Like there's nothing you can do. So I don't know how it possibly could be a big deal. It would be very impressive if our school managed to find the way into a huge.
It would be a very MSU thing to do.
Yeah.
Will Wade. Actually, I respected this the other day that he said, "I was NIL before NIL." I mean, that's a great line.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. Speaking of media scrums, I'll never forget about the one that he took where the media was like, "Have you read the articles?" And he was like, "No, I haven't." And they're like, they give him a little look, and he's like, "How bad is it? How bad do they have me?" Do they know everything? Do they know most of the stuff? That's one of the
very Arrested Development.
I remember being in that LSU locker because Michigan State played them in the tournament in 19, and I remember being in that LSU locker with those guys, and it was an interesting Yeah, I mean those open locker rooms in situations like that are kind of fun. But those kids seem to handle. I mean, they were all well compensated. They were
Yeah,
they
were
were
taken care
good
of.
with
They
it.
were good.
Yeah. We've got just a tiny bit of hockey, and then we're gonna chat one last thing, and then we'll get you out of here, Graham.
Yeah. So Isaac Howard, Iceman, wins Hobie Baker. Massive award. First for MSU since 2001, and I think the first non-Miller family member to win. And he's bringing it back to East Lansing. Things didn't work out with Tampa Bay, whatever that means, and he's coming back. So you get Trey Augustine, you get the Hobie Baker Award winner, you get a really good freshman class coming in. Like, I know Western just won the national championship, but lots of reasons to be optimistic about what's happening at Von Ice Arena next year. So
yeah, I was going through it with Adam Nightingale when I was in his office for a column last week. Within the last week, and he was going through all the guys. Now, and a lot of these you can't comment publicly on yet, but just next year, you've got 15 NHL draft picks on next year's roster, and you think about what this program was. And I think the biggest thing is, just because college hockey is one of those sports where if NHL teams don't trust that their guys are developing, they don't let them stay there. They don't put them there.
Yeah.
And so the big thing that is they have the full faith of NHL pro, they had guys who could have signed, but the NHL team said, we're happy, where it could have left. Then we're happy with you here now. And so, yeah, the only discouraging thing about MSU hockey at all is it's still a single elimination tournament next year.
yeah.
And that just is stupid. And I don't get it. And I never will, because I'm not saying, look, if MSU hockey got beat twice, big deal. You got beat. Okay. Somebody else moves on. But they hadn't lost twice in a row since October 2023. And they played a game where they didn't put the team away they should have. And there's a lesson in that. And then they played I don't think, a very good third period where they lost control of the game.
Yeah.
And that in a season that's 47 weeks and starts on October 1st and has a 3-week Big Ten tournament that starts with the series. Like, that shouldn't be it. That can't be it in a sport where one bounce ends it. I don't get it. It's different.
The first round of the Big Ten tournament, 3-game series. Everything else, 1 game. Why not? Not to take anything away from Western, but watching us pretty well handle the national championship winning team with a backup goalie, and Luca DePasco's great goalie off to Minnesota. He's going to have a great career. Happy for him. And we're not playing against him, but like, man, it really hurts to see that, to know that the goal went in at the end of the third period, and them's the breaks. That's how it works.
The problem is, I don't know how you prepare for it, other than, you have to just be better in that moment, and you have to spend a year getting yourself ready to be better in that moment. And that's tricky to do. And you can, and maybe the answer is, in hockey, you celebrate, because the harder accomplishment is like the Big Ten regular season title. Maybe you just start celebrating that as a bigger deal. I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like, I didn't follow college hockey for like 12 years in my life, from like late teenage years to in my 30s, because of that. Once I really discovered how unfair, I just lost interest. And so anyway, I think though, the fact that they've sustained it the way they have, the fact that it keeps growing the way it is, the fact that this is year 3, this has just been 3 years, and they've won 2 straight Big Ten titles, and 2 straight Big Ten tournament titles is pretty incredible. And they've reinvigorated things to the nth degree. And I think they just got to make sure the NCAA tournament doesn't become a bugaboo for them.
All right. Graham, if you know anyone who works in the media, it'd be great if there could be a poll that declared someone a national championship. Just, like we used to do back in the day. Because then there wouldn't be a 1-game elimination. We're going to let you go here in 2 seconds. I'm just super curious. One question for you. We're not going to super cover Nico Amaliva, aptly named, but sat out spring practice, trying to renegotiate his NIL with Tennessee, and then Tennessee said kick rocks. And I believe Mario Cristobal also said something very similar if anyone tried to do that nonsense at Miami. do you think this is the future? Like, is this the back door here? Is that all of the coaches collude on we're not doing this anymore?
We're not having these conversations.
Yeah, that this is a breaking point. Yeah, that there's I don't know, because there's always somebody who wants the quarterback, who needs a quarterback, and that's where I just don't believe it. And so, yeah, I do like that. There's a point where you say we're not, it's not fair to the rest of the team if we let ourselves get held hostage like this. There's a certain way to do this, and this isn't in it. And I know there are holdouts in pro sports, but to me, sort of if you're committed to, I don't know, at a certain point, if you're committed in the spring, are you committed to the fall? I don't know. These are conversations. I'm not against a quarterback getting everything that they're worth, but this doesn't seem like the greatest way to do it. But again, I don't find fault with anybody in a sense. I mean, the kid wants to do this. He's taking a big risk, but somebody's probably going to pay him. And the school says this is a bridge too far for us. We're not going to do this. I respect that, and I like that, and I hope there's more of that. And I do think if you get a few instances where things don't work out for the quarterback or the kid or things like that, that would help, where kids start to realize there is risk in doing this. But I don't know that there is for him. He's a good quarterback, and somebody will think that that's something they need to have.
Yeah, he's going to land somewhere, but the circumstances are a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
I remember on this podcast, us talking about how it was unfair that football and basketball players had to sit out a year because other players got to transfer immediately. I think should just reverse that.
Yep.
Just
other way around.
Everyone.
That should have been the solution. Yep. This volleyball, instead of being able to sit out or not sit out, should have had to sit out instead of, yep. That would have fixed so much of this. So much.
Yeah. Graham, cannot thank you enough for joining us. You, of course, can and should read Graham at the Lansing State Journal, even when he says dumb things like Tre Holloman is a good Spartan, even though he's leaving. But he often says smart things like this is his favorite podcast ever. You can also check him out on Couch in the Rube podcast, wherever you get podcasts. No, that's definitely exactly what he said. Graham, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it, guys.
Thanks, Bob.
All right. Thanks again to Graham Couch for joining us. And if you are not subscribed to the LSJ, seriously, what are you doing? It's like NIL, but for the community.
And it only costs like $2 to do it digitally
so
for the
cheap.
whole year.
It really is. It really is. So
And
cheap.
Greg, do you want to give the email address tip for anyone who might be wondering, oh, no, my subscription's running up?
Wait, what is the email address tip? Tell. Oh,
If
you can. So there's a thing that you can do with Gmail where you can add after the first part of your Gmail email, you can add a little plus button, and then you can put extra characters there to create unique email addresses. And you can do that with the email address that you provide the LSJ, and all the notifications, all that stuff keep going to your regular inbox. But it's an all new email that they've given you the new promotional rate for. So,
Support local journalism.
Support local journalism. Do with that information as you will. All right. Should we take these social media questions?
Yeah, get them started. I'm just going to make sure that we don't have any in the inbox right now, but let's get it started.
Here's the problem. I think a lot of people, because of the way that Jonesy, you posed this, expected Graham to be here for them. So now we get stuff like Spartan 18770 asks, what are the top 3 things Jonathan Smith has to accomplish in this upcoming season? And now Plum, you get to answer this question.
Win. He has to win at least 3 times. So those are the top 3 things.
What?
Winning
3 more times because he won 4 times last season.
Then double it. 6 times. 3 times 2. The top 3 things are winning twice each of the 3 times. Is that
and
good?
yeah, again, we'll talk about this when we get into the fall. But
how about avoid stupid cliches or mixing metaphors? Those are 2 additional things. So winning, no cliches, no mixing metaphors.
I also think if you listen to Graham, you can tell that his view on spring football is not that different than Alex Plum's view on spring football, which is to say, win, run ball better.
Just do best. And this maybe isn't just a question for the coaching, which I think that was actually what I took away from this segment, was that he was like, we've had good coaches. It's not always a coaching thing. And I thought, insightful.
Speaking of insightful, Jason Fry asks, if Greg Gard were a food, why would he be a 3-week-old sloppy Joe meat? The meat really does it here. It's not even a complete sloppy Joe.
No,
it's
just the meat.
It's just slop in the bowl.
You scrubbed the sauce off.
You rinsed it. You rinsed the sauce off in a way. Like how?
You brought it back to ground beef, but it's mildly seasoned by osmosis.
By Manwich and the Manwich family. And then you left it in the sun for 3 weeks. That's about right.
That's Greg Gard on Lake Michigan, that's for sure.
Also from Jason Fry, in honor of Western Michigan winning the men's hockey national championship, have any of the hosts or guests ever lived in Kalamazoo? If you have, can you please tell us more about it? Because I'm completely unaware of any connections to that city the hosts and guests may have.
I wish we'd ask Graham about this. I don't know if he's lived in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, we don't know anything about this. Probably not. Yeah, almost certainly not.
Almost certainly.
I do like Kalamazoo as a town. And I'm happy for Western.
There was a button that someone had when we were in college, by the way, a button. Remember when you used to have the buttons? We would have those stupid buttons all over their book bags and stuff. Anyway, and her button said, yes, there really is a Kalamazoo. And I always loved that. I don't know what it's in reference to, if it was like a song or something, but
I think it's in reference to Elvis dying. This was explained to me at one point. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently his last public appearance or something, he was last reported to have been in Kalamazoo, and then he died, and people were confused at first that maybe he died in Kalamazoo, which of course he didn't. He died on the toilet in his home eating a sandwich. That's, I think, actually what happened.
Was it the peanut butter banana famous
it was
Elvis
a crazy, heart-destroying sandwich. Maybe none of this is true. Maybe all of it's true.
It's
anyway,
all apocryphal.
That's what I bring to podcastery. Next up from the stupidest Shardy. Okay. Go for it.
Next question. Alex Plum, have you ever driven down I-94 and visited a place called Mama's Mercantile and Eatery? And if so, can you recall the address specifically?
I can. 1200.
Wrong. 4450 Clear Lake Road in Grass Lake, Michigan. It's great. Check out mamasmerc.com for great food, family stuff, menus.
Stupidest Shardy. You wrote out a whole question, but then you got marked, baby. You got marked. Next up from the Key Ski, how will coaches pay...
Stupidest Shardy. Ask Graham.
You're still going to read the question, even though he's not here and we don't have this information? Okay, go for it.
He hit on this.
I think
Super Shorty asks, Graham, we've been led to believe MSU's NIL support is solid. Do you believe it's good enough to compete in football and basketball if revenue sharing doesn't come soon? Do you think football will get all the support it needs to contend when revenue sharing comes? Graham's talked on this and Alan Howler's talked about the split. I think the broader question, and Graham alluded to this, and we've talked about this several times on the podcast, is that it seems like the athletic department is naive about what's going to be required in a post-revenue sharing world. The question isn't, do they have the money? They have the money from rev share. It's this idea that July 1st or whatever is the end date of NIL. That's naive. And candidly, my opinion here is that if that's Alan Howler's opinion, that probably will be the reason that he is ultimately fired from the job.
That'll be ultimately disqualified. My opinion on this is, guys, chill. Don't worry about it. Sparty NIL takes money from my checking account every week, and that'll be enough.
Every week?
No, it's every month. It's every month, and it's the lowest tier. But that's going to be enough. Don't worry. It's all taken care of. It's all, I got this. Can't read, can't write is handling the whole thing. You're good. Next up from the Key Ski, how will coaches pay change in the NIL era? No way a college coach should make more than all of his players combined, not to mention assistants.
How much
I mean,
does
certainly that's not how it works in the NFL or baseball or the NBA. So
what's Izzo make a
eventually,
year?
I think it's 5, 6, something like that.
Something tells me Izzo's not making more than all of his players combined.
I don't know if he's making 6.
I bet you Cohen Carr is making very good money next year.
Okay.
I can say from everything that we've heard for football, Jonathan Smith is not making more than all of his players combined.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Smith is well compensated relative to his peers.
Next up is for Kevin Greck. Why doesn't Plum know shit about sports? Alex, do you want to respond?
Shit, Keith, my Lord and my God, I don't know what I did to you. Pissed on your Cheerios, I guess. Did I come for Keith at some point? I must have come for him at some point.
I think it's because last week you intimated in a rage state that there was no way that Tre Holloman would be picked up by a serious team because he was a garbage player in the tournament.
And I have been borne out in that. Who can fucking say anything about NC State? Were they even in the tournament? I know they were in the tournament, but that doesn't mean anything because they're NC State and they didn't get out of the first weekend.
Remember that time we wanted their fat kid?
Yeah,
to
everyone
be our
did.
Player?
Everyone did. And I will say, in defense of Alex Plum, Keith Ski, if what you're saying is true here, go back to the story, the officiating story from earlier in this episode, and there might be some there might be some clues in there.
Yeah, you might understand why I'm on this. Or if you were a real long timer, Keith, you would know that it was not my sports prowess that got me here in the first place, and nor is it what's kept me here. So
next up from Nate C. Didn't we beat Western Michigan with our backup goalie earlier this season? Yes, as established. Luca did play in the GLI. But then he adds, I'll save you some effort. Yes, we did. Did we lose the wrong goalie this offseason? Apparently, Nate C. doesn't trust Coach Nightingale.
There it is.
Wow, Nate. My God, man. Like,
really
here's the thing. Here's the difference between you and, say, Alexander. Alexander over here has a consistent nihilism that he brings to his sports viewing. The lack of care is consistent, and we love him for that. But also the lack of the sincere passion is consistent. You, unlike Alex, do genuinely love MSU hockey in a way that you know.
Unlike Alex.
But you know that 3 years ago, this level of privilege with which you speak is not founded. So this idea somehow that the man who got us to this place, Trey Augustine, is not worthy? My Lord and my God, as our dear friend Alexander would say, look at yourself in the mirror and say, I need to touch grass. Get outside, friend.
He continues to talk directly to Alex Plum. Are you actually mad at Holloman? Well, let me rephrase that. Did you actually think you'd enjoy college sports like this?
I think the second question is the better question. Am I actually? No, I don't.
I
don't know if I am. I'm not mad at him. I'm mad at the situation that we find ourselves in. I'm mad at NIL.
He's a fucking liar.
Well, I mean, that's probably true. But did you actually think you'd enjoy college sports like this? Oh, this is how I've always enjoyed all sports in many respects. I was unhinged throughout our time at Michigan State. Yeah. Kevin can agree with that.
Yes, so you should have stood next to this man in the lower bowl is out now.
Yeah, I mean,
I went to many football games with him,
and I would scream at the officials from the lower bowl. in between the balls leaving the player's hands on free throws when it was dead silent. So the referees could hear me clearly call them assholes or, dick fucks or whatever it was.
And by
I had to
name.
say.
My name.
By first name.
Yep.
No, Jim Burr. I came for Jim Burr every fucking time I could. He was garbage, god awful Jim Burr.
And finally from Nate C, bonus, why is the Big Ten ass and everything but football? The interesting thing is you could have included football into the last couple of years.
Right.
I think that will continue to change. The Big Ten is the money conference, even above the SEC. And I think that will continue to bear itself out.
Baseball and softball will never compete there.
Yeah. Remember when Nebraska was like, oh, we're going to join the Big Ten and we're going to run that conference in baseball. And then we're going to bring it like that was a Nebraska. Next up from Thomas, who's more likely to be found in the next year? A center that can defend and score to at least hang with the top of the conference, or Mel Tucker? Well, the Abood law firm seems to know where he is, so I think they might track him down eventually.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Abood law firm has not accepted service for him. That's the interesting piece. That's clearly dodging service, actually, at that point in time where your attorneys are not allowed to accept service for you.
So let's stupidly hang on this for a moment. Is there a reason that you would want a default judgment, Jonesy?
No. He's buying time. No.
Okay.
No, there's no benefit to a default judgment.
Okay. So this is just a delay tactic, and they don't think a default judgment will be.
Yeah, he's dodging service at this point in time. Like, to get to a place where it's posted in the LSJ, you've tried service, and I have not read the motion. I'm surprised they have not called the Abood law firm and said, "Hey, can you accept service on behalf of your client?" And they probably would have said no, is my guess. But either way, it's shady.
Well, okay. Expand on that. Continue. I'm actually interested in this.
Well, let's not forget that Mel Tucker who's he waiting for service from? His wife?
No, Brenda Tracy.
Oh, sorry. Yes, right. So let's not forget. Thank you. Mel Tucker is in a triumvirate of legal issues. He has our friends and institution, Michigan State University, from whom he's wishing for like $90 million, which he'll never get.
Right.
Then he has his wife, who also would like $90 million.
And is a lawyer,
whatever,
by the way.
or whatever he has in his bank account, will accept all of it, which we know he's been stealing from. And then you have Brenda Tracy, who would like to take money from him as well. So Mel is probably trying to figure out where he's getting money from and has been delaying so as to improve the financial clarity of his life. So that's my guess. Or we do know that Mel Tucker, can we say this here? Can we say what Mel Tucker likes to do on weekends? How he likes to unwind?
Birding?
Cards?
Oh. That's something
Yeah.
to plumb.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, so we happen to have it on pretty good authority that Mel Tucker enjoys gambling. So I don't know the financial situation of Mel Tucker, I guess, is my point.
Yep.
So
at some point, at least, he was when he was in the thick of it. Although actually toward the end of the thick of it, it turns out.
Yeah. I don't.
After the thick of it. If I may, if we're going to stick on this, if we seem to think that maybe he's in some financial straits, wouldn't you want to get everything settled with Brenda Tracy and with your wife while we know you don't have any money and then go after MSU? Why wouldn't why wouldn't you be motivated to finalize these
Right.
lawsuits, your divorce, and then also this civil lawsuit, and then go
Great
after the
question.
university?
I don't know. Well, because his divorce is not stagnant, right? Because that would have been, if he got money from the university, that money would have been due, owed, paid, and payable, right, during the course of his marriage. His wife would be equally entitled to that money.
Yeah, good point.
And Brenda Tracy probably could make a pretty compelling argument. It doesn't really matter for her. I suspect this is what he can afford to pay an attorney more than anything else. Again,
Oh my
let's
God.
not forget he's with the Abood fucking law firm, because
Just in alphabetical order, the first lawyer name that comes up in the phone book in Lansing, Michigan.
Oh my
AB.
God.
that's that's probably kind of where we're at right now, is that he may not have as much money as we think he has.
What's sadder, his situation or the fact that we spent more time talking about him than our football team in this episode? Next up, from Mama Leaf.
No, Thomas Zambiasi. Question
Oh,
2.
Thomas. So sorry, Thomas. Are there any big sports events that you just can't get into? Gripes as an ecologist aside, I just can't watch golf, literally more boring than counting grass.
Oh, wow. Thomas coming for grass.
Good for
Yeah.
Very well for my summer content.
Well, it actually wouldn't be very hard at my house. We have almost none left.
Athletic events that I just can't get into. Of those that I have interest in, golf might be towards the bottom, actually. I might
Yeah.
be with Thomas on this one.
I
I'll watch a
don't know
baseball game if it's on. NBA, I keep track of. Football, obviously. There was a cricket game on in a hotel earlier this week, and I was like, I gotta learn this eventually. So sat down and watched it and just
highlight.
Hotel, yeah. But golf is very take it or leave it for me. Maybe it's just because the Masters are on. I'm thinking about it right now, but like, I wonder if there is a different sport that's even more.
There's no one
leave
as
it.
compelling as Tiger used to be. I don't know
Mhm.
why, but Tiger was incredibly compelling to watch, and I just don't care about any of these personalities.
I've got one. Formula One.
Oh, NASCAR.
Bro. Formula One. I hope you're really into the fight for 7th place if you're watching a Formula One race. My word. I like the stories around Formula One. I actually track it a little bit, but actually watching a Formula One race is rarely interesting. And next up from Monopoly, BS question number 1. This week, as opposed to last week, and with Graham Couch close by, not anymore, is he full of baloney, beans, or knowledge? I'll send this one to Jonesy because you had direct words. I think that this is a reference to last week.
All right, Monopoly. Look, if you want to continue to participate in social media questions, you cannot format your questions like a goddamn fucking E coming home. Like, holy shit. This week was on a different line than as opposed to last week, which was on a different line than and with Graham Couch, which was different than close by. Stop. I
He's
love
hot.
you.
He's hot.
But stop.
Oh,
Graham, he's part British. Beans. That's what he's full of. I don't know. And I think we told him that I don't agree with his take on Tre Holloman. And that's okay. Also, people who get upset at people who publish their opinions for a living, stop. Like, Graham does that for a living and does a good job at it. And he says dumb ones from time to time, including his ones on Tre Holloman. And coming at Plum. Next up, BS question number 2. Which one of the following values attributed to Isaac Howard put him over the top in order to win the Hobie Baker Award? Plum, I cannot think of a question that's more primed for you. 1, teamwork. 2, dedication. 3, integrity. 4, exceptional play. 5, humility. God damn it, Momopoly. 6, character.
It was number 7. It was number 7. Isaac Howard has a very, very large Hobie Baker. And when the committee saw it, they knew that's what it was. So good old number 7, trusty 7, lucky 7, they say.
How often has a Hobie Baker Award winner come back to school?
Not often. This was discussed somewhere, and it was like St. Cloud State or something like that. The last time a Hobie Baker Award winner came back.
Yeah,
it's been a minute.
That's great.
All right, last up, Mr. Neurotic Pants. One, ever since Danton Cole, MSU hockey has come on strong early on in the season and then blew its load with 2 months left in the season. What's up with that? I'm confused by this because I don't know that it.
Yeah, I'm not sure we did that this season.
Yeah, we
won the Big Ten tournament.
Right.
And the Big Ten.
Yeah. I understand that the last 2 years with the tournament has sucked. I get that. But they won everything else that they could win this year, including the individual award at the end. It's tough to win in the college tournament. It just really is.
Yeah.
And next up for Mr. Neurotic Pants, Jonesy, why was Gretch asked to leave the MSU gymnastics event? This seems like a good episode for what's the name of the Mr. Neurotic Pants show? The behind the scenes, behind the
Mel Tucker or something.
Yeah, the Mel Tucker, Mark D'Antonio bonanza.
Yeah.
Well, look, it was in the spirit of it was in the right spirit, but what Kevin had done is he had gone over to Spartan Stadium where the vans are all parked, where the gas station used to be. Yeah. He picked up a van and he rolled up to Jennison and kept trying to get the team into the van because he wanted to show them the location of their would-be stadium, which is coming. But it was very off-putting, the get in my van sort of thing.
And I see that now. I understand that now. I get it.
He kept saying, "Let me show you my Hobie Baker." And they were like, "What the fuck is wrong with this guy?" So
I mean, I got a real egg on my face on this one. This was a real boner on my part, and I do get it now. I do get
good. All right,
but it's ripe for television, Mr. Erotic Pants.
Is it? I actually would strongly disagree with that. Anyway, gentlemen, it's been a great week. Go Green.
Go White.